Polling numbers show Democrats have a 29% approval rating, the lowest in modern history. Many are saying Democrats are in a state of disarray. 56 days in of the twice impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald Trump administration. So the question is, what do they do now? Last week, of course, late Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, of course, led the effort along with 10 others to vote for Republicans' continuing resolution. He is facing massive calls by many to actually step down as Senate Minority Leader. Lots is going on, and so let's talk with Glenn Ivey. He is the congressman from Maryland. Glad to have you here, Congressman. It's a whole lot going on. There's a belief that Democrats are all over the place. I keep telling people you can't focus on 2026 because, hell, haven't even got to the summer of 2025. But the reality is what the Republicans are doing is that was their goal. That's just throw everything up against the wall at one time, making it very hard to respond to their efforts.
Well, I think there have been some good responses, especially in court. I think most of those cases have gone our way so far, although we're not out of the woods yet. We've got a lot more work to do. But the injunctions that have been put in place to protect government employees or to block the challenges to constitutional rights like birthright citizenship. So far, those have gone in the right direction. So hopefully that will continue. In Congress, though, I think, Friday was a very disappointing day. Hakeem Jeffries did a great job on Tuesday of organizing House Democrats to vote against the Trump spending bill, which was a Trojan horse bill aimed at really undermining the authority of Congress to make sure we know where money goes and prevent him from sending money from blue states to red states. Unfortunately, as you just pointed out, Senate leader, Democratic leader anyway, Chuck Schumer, got 10 other Democrats to go with him and to vote with the Trump agenda. So that was a shock. It was a disappointment. It was a missed opportunity. And I think, we're only going to get a couple more shots to turn back the tide with what Trump's doing, at least from Congress. And so we need to make sure we get the next one right.
On that particular point there, I'm constantly trying to explain to people that you have to understand process. And that is, y'all are very, 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 very limited on the House side to stop the Republicans from moving forward. The rules of the House are totally different than the rules of the Senate. And the rules of the Senate, you can filibuster. You can, one person, you got the blue slip, one person can hold up nominations. We've seen that beforehand. You don't have the same type of thing on the House side. So, frankly, people don't understand. The most you can do on the House side is yell, scream, hold news conferences. In terms of do things like that, procedurally, you simply don't have the power to do in the House like you can do in the Senate.
Yeah, that's right. So, Hakeem had led efforts by the Democrats, in the last 2 years to block some of those efforts that the Republicans were making. And we were successful with that because the Republicans splintered. And so they needed Democratic votes to get things passed. And that's how we kept the government open and, raised the debt ceiling and the like. This time around, though, the House Republicans stayed unified. So even though we were unified, so were the House Republicans. So that was majority rule is enough in the House. So that's how it got through. But, Hakeem Jeffries, I would say, met the moment. But, clearly Schumer did not in the Senate.
So then you have the folks who say, oh, well, the antics of the Democrats, they look like children, what they were doing when it came to Trump's speech. And to me, that's one of those things was, OK, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And frankly, I think that I had no issue with what Democrats did with this joint session of Congress speech. We had the State of Our Union. I didn't care that trash speech he delivered. We had Reverend Bishop William Barber delivering ours. And so that's the other thing is like people are demanding something of House Democrats that doesn't exist. Senate is a whole different deal. And I do believe, obviously, messaging is important as well. But and again, this is not defending Democrats. It's just looking at this thing for what it is. Until the pain impacts a larger group of people, mostly white people, you're not going to then see the response that you need. You can stand there and yell, holler, and scream and be upset. But if the perception is that, well, that's liberals, that's progressives, that's those Democrats, they don't care. What has to happen here, Musk and Trump must continue what they're doing, and the pain must then hit red America. It must hit their voters. That is the only way you're going to see things change. And what happened when people started showing up to 3 or 4 Republican town halls? They got scared, was like, we ain't having town halls again, because they don't want to be yelled at, because they don't want to have to face their constituents.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's important for House Democrats to make sure that we're laying out to the American people and being clear and explaining why things are going so badly for the Republicans and the Trump administration, and most importantly, how it's hurting them. Like the cuts to Medicaid, $881 billion in cuts, as you pointed out, that's going to hit red America. That's going to hit rural America. And, they're going to have hospitals shutting down and the like. They're going to have grandma getting kicked off, her medical treatments because she can't afford to pay for them herself. And then you've got, in this bill that just passed, veterans being punished. And so you'll have the $23 billion cut from the PACT Act that was aimed at helping veterans who were injured during the last wars based on their service. You're going to have many veterans fired in this, purge they're making of government employees, because there are 80,000 veterans who are government employees right now. And so, and the impact of firing these government employees is going to result in poor service to people and dramatic impact things like terminating clinical trials for pediatric cancer. The irony was they had that young boy at the State of the Union, and they celebrated the fact that he was a cancer survivor. But at the same time, they're cutting off the research that helps to find other cures for young boys like that in the same situation. We've got to make sure we're pointing those things out to the American public so they can see what's going on, see the negative impacts, and turn the tide. And then hopefully in 2026, we will have done enough to win back the House, and then we'll have real power again, as you're pointing out.
Yeah, I just think that I do think it's a very good idea. We see this with Governor Tim Walz and others who are holding town halls in Republican areas. You must take the fight to them. That's what actually has to happen. And so I dare say, for the people who are whining and complaining, I've been saying that the beginning of this year, going through August, it's really about education, enlightenment, and informing. These are the facts of what's going on. While that is happening, then it's also mobilizing, organizing, understanding that you can't tweet your way out of this. You can't Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook your way out of this. It literally has to be organizing and mobilizing. You've got a critical Supreme Court race coming up in Wisconsin on April 1st. You've got Elon Musk dumping millions of dollars to the Republican candidate. Sarah Crawford is the Democratic candidate. If she wins that, then Democrats hold a 5-2 majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. That means that you beat back partisan gerrymandering. You can make that illegal. You allow ballot drop boxes to be reinstated. You have them restore the powers of the Democratic governor, Tony Evers, and the Attorney General and the Secretary of State. Now, all of a sudden, you focus on, we're going to have Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist from Michigan. Listen, you win there. You've got 3 special elections coming up. Yes, they're in red districts, but you still have to be mobilizing and organizing in those areas as well. You never know. There could be an upset. So I just think that bitching and moaning is one thing, but actually organizing and mobilizing is what's required.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And part of, the mobilization and organization process is making sure we're demonstrating to the public the mistakes that the Trump administration's making, the negative impact it's having on them and their families. Remember, he campaigned on economics. He said he was going to make their lives better, and Biden had hurt him. And here he is taking money out of their pockets with these misguided tariff policies and the like. So we got to make sure we're clear on that. We got to make sure we keep litigating and winning in court, because that's helping to block some of their efforts. I think they're getting a little frustrated with the fact that the courts are, quote unquote, getting in their way. Because, yeah, you got to follow the law, even when you're president. And also, we got to make sure we're organizing in states and especially in congressional districts that are represented by members in the Republican Party, but they just barely won. Some of them that are Republicans who won their districts are in districts that Harris carried. So we should be able to take those back. And we need to make sure we do everything we can to position ourselves to do exactly that.
Yeah, you've got about 20 or so Republicans who are, look, they could have some issues. And they must be targeted. Folks must be going to those areas. They must be talking to those voters.
Yes.
And also for me, it's about how do you look at numbers? How many votes did the person win last time? And how many votes did the Democratic challenger lose by? And then say, how many doors are we touching? How many people are we touching? Here's the deal. Even in those districts you're talking about, even though you may have a Republican who represents them, it doesn't mean that you can't actually have your own town halls in that particular district, in that congressional district, talking to those voters, educating them, because the reality is the right-wing echo chamber pushes out many of these lies. You have to combat these lies with actual facts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, the other part we need to do now that we didn't do very well in 2024 is we've got to get in these communication lines that the Republicans use that we don't even know about, or we didn't know about them in November. So people who were listening to that were only getting one side of the story. A lot of times they were getting lies and distortions and half-truths, and they weren't hearing anything on the other side, so they were believing it. We've got to make sure we get heard in those same communities, too. And so there's a really aggressive effort. Leader Hakeem Jeffries is spearheading this. And we've got a communications team that's new and in place that's making a difference with this, reaching out to folks like you and other influencers and journalists on cable and, other podcasters and the like to make sure that every avenue we can take to get the information out. That's what we're going to do.
Yep, absolutely. Congressman Glenn Ivey, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
I want to bring in my panel right now. We're joined by Dr. Amakongo Dibinga, Senior Professorial Lecturer, School of International Service, American University. He's also author of Lies About Black People. Dr. Julian Malveaux, economist, president emerita, Bennett College, author of Surviving and Thriving, 365 Facts in Black Economic History. And Ben Dixon, pastor, political commentator, and author of God is Not a Republican, joining us out of Atlanta. You know what? I'm gonna start with you, Ben. Here's this pretty dumbass comment from somebody named Ken B in our YouTube chat. He goes, "Bitching and moaning is what this show does with Trump every show. When was the last time he wasn't mentioned on this show?" Well, you idiot Ken B, you mentioned him because you mentioned the things that he's doing. So when Trump's DOJ chose to stop the lawsuit against the petrochemical plant in Louisiana in Cancer Alley that impacts Black people, you kind of got to mention them. When you see them removing the history of Black veterans, even presidential, Medal of Valor, Medal of Honor winners, you kind of got to mention them. When you talk about Medicaid cuts and the cuts from Elon Musk, you kind of got to mention them. So, yeah, if the right mentioned Biden and Harris every single day for 4 years, you damn right we're going to share with our audience facts about the evil, shameful, despicable things that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing. Simple Simon Ken B.
And Roland, I'm so glad that you mentioned that comment, because it is a standardized tactic of MAGA to try to get us to stand down from doing what we know we need to do in this moment, which is why I'm so grateful for this show. Because as I heard you discussing this with the congressman, I realized that you all you see it very clearly. And what's so difficult in this moment is to get people to wake up and see what's actually happening. And that's why it's so critical that we have voices like yours. The congressperson was speaking about how Black congressional leaders should go across and speak to other platforms. We have to get a repetitive routine of stating the obvious, that Donald Trump is a complete and abject failure. He is turning into the slumlord president of a shithole nation. And because of his decisions, people are suffering. And so I'm so grateful to know that people, leaders, Tim Walz and so many others are going across the country right now and going on their turf, going into MAGA land and making sure everyone in MAGA land realizes that they've been hoodwinked.
Well, I just get a kick out of people who don't pay attention, Julian. So this same idiot posed, yeah, you mentioned, that's right, I said it. When was the last time you ever talked about him? He drives your ratings. Where's your plan? That means you're stupid. I literally just talked about what needs to happen with Congressman Glenn Ivey. Every single day we talked about that. We had a 7-hour State of Our Union broadcast that was one of the highest watch shows on the YouTube out of all of the channels on YouTube on that particular day. We're constantly talking about a plan. But again, when you got dumb folk who don't pay attention and don't listen, and all they want to do is complain, anybody who says that we have not talked about a plan of action on this show, they literally are dumb.
Well, dumb, and dumber. There are fools, damn fools, and big old MF fools out there. And forgive me for saying MF, but you know what I mean. Here's the bottom line. The Democrats have dropped the ball. We're all scrambling to figure out how they can pick it back up. Congressman Ivy has made a great series of points about what needs to happen. But until Democrats do something, I remember back in, I'm old, Roland. I love saying I'm old. A people united will never be defeated. And what we're doing is we're seeing a people not united playing games. Schumer needs to be taken to a small room with a licking stick because that rolling over was just really absurd. He didn't have to do that. But at the end of the day, what we have some stalwart members of Congress who are saying, "Oh hell no." You have some others who are saying, "Oh, we don't want to be disruptive." Well, what do you think this orange man is but disruptive? So when we look at all of this, what we have to just do is contextualize it and say, this is unacceptable. But there are those who will take the unacceptable and make it acceptable. And we have to resist. That's all we have to do is resist. So I am disturbed, distracted, bewildered, annoyed, and as many of us are. But you know what? Rest is resistance. Reflection is resistance. Our existence is resistance.
See, I'm not disturbed or distracted, Omakongo, because we predicted what was going to happen. We said what they were going to do. 2 days after the election, I never forget, folks were like, "Dang, Roland, how have you moved on?" I said, because the election is over. I mean, it's called accepting the results of reality, and then now focused on how do you create a new reality. And the fact of the matter is, you cannot focus on 2028 in 2025. Yeah. You can't focus on 2027 or even 2026. What you can focus on is 2025. So, as Congressman Glenn Ivey said, what do you have to do? There's a legal action, massive lawsuits everywhere. You let nothing go unopposed. That's legal. You have your protest side, okay? Critically important, putting pressure on those Republicans. You have the education, the informing side. That's important as well, okay? Vice President Kamala Harris did not lose by a massive amount of votes. She did not, okay? So we need to understand how the results can be changed. But you have to understand that you focus on what's in front of you right now.
I'm so glad that you said that, because one of the things that have frustrated me over the weekend was all of this talk about whether AOC should challenge Schumer in New York. And I'm like, that's 2028. Like,
Right.
Why are people?
That's 3 years from now.
Right. When I first heard it, I'm like, is there an election this year? Like, but people are sticking to that. I've heard people mention things about Hakeem Jeffries, and now people want to talk about challenging Chuck Schumer's leadership in the Senate. Now that's a different conversation. But you're right, Roland. This idea about needing to think right now when in the present, this happens when you've been focused on this the entire time, which is what we've been doing here on the Black Star Network. The fact of the matter is that ever since Joe Biden stepped down, the Democrats have been fractured going into this new election right now of Trump. And so, yes, it's fractured, but this is the better time to be fractured now. But as you said, if we can understand that everybody's saying Democrats don't have a plan, but you're right. Some are involved in the protest. Some are involved in the legal. And then you have the street folks who aren't part of, independence or whatever, just the activists. As they say, if the people lead, the leaders will follow. And the Democrats on some levels need to step back and watch that while they're doing what they're doing in the courts and in the House and what they can do to challenge these things. This is the time to synthesize it all. And if people start paying, and this idea of, well, they can, Republicans control all the information streams. Well, I'm seeing Jeffries come on here. I'm seeing Ivy come on here. And someone who are realizing that if we work together building on networks like this, we can build networks that have already been out there countering the Foxes and the OANNs and all of that other type of stuff. That's what Representative Ivy was talking about when he was saying getting to understand new platforms. And so this is the time when you're supposedly, as Democrats, powerless, is to really organize. I think some of their beefs need to go behind closed doors, to be quite honest, because that's going to help show a little bit more cohesion. I understand that they're frustrated and upset, but if they continue to listen to what you're saying, if they continue to listen to people on the ground and actually turn towards their base, which was a mistake in the Harris campaign, trying to appeal to independents and Republicans and all of that, they stick to their base, some real change can happen this year.
Yeah, I don't focus on the things that I cannot control. I focus on what we can control. That's the most important thing. So,
hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $8.6 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.